Yeah, thanks for that. This guy, this young man who's got this channel was talking about milk, and he's talking about you're not going to find any creatures or animals in the animal kingdom, in the mineral kingdom, the elemental kingdoms. You're not going to find another animal. In other words, you're not going to find a cow drinking the milk from a giraffe, right? Although we've experienced that, right? Like, for example, the great ape, Gaia, right? In vitro, because of the amount of empathy and love, real love that a great ape mother experiences in her heart and her soul, right? That she has for a child. But I've known this because this is sort of how it works because of the way that I experienced to know how it works. When you realize the difference between an accelerator of learning at the highest speed because you have a direct current relationship with the first line of communication, which is the first creative expansion, which is eternal love. So when you're experiencing eternal love through your heart, you have a direct communication line with the first informer, which is the highest speed engine of creation, which is an eternal engine, which is on fire to give electrons away at the highest rate of speed. So you got a one connection, right? You're clear, just like when I was a child. I'm not supposed to experience anything less than eternal light or eternal love that's on fire to give away energy, right? Okay, so I gave a command function when I was a little kid at 4 years of age. Anything that is less than what that is, which is what love is, it goes on forever, which is what the law is, gets burned off or cleared out of the server. Because I'm a server, okay? A multidimensional server connected to the one, right? Because that's what the law is. So what he was essentially sharing, because this is one example of this, I realized as a child, for example, because I did grow up and I experienced. In other words, the experience was not coincidental. It was to remind me of what I've already learned. Wake up, buddy boy. And what was I observing? A mother breastfeeding her child. That's the immune system. It's her milk, mother's milk, to her own child that came through that gate. Okay? Oh no, do not be drinking your mama's milk. We got another brand of milk for you. So now you begin to know the difference between an inverter and an accelerator, which essentially means we're gonna make sure that you unlearn everything that's already been learned in a morphogenetic field structure of communication between the first creative expression, so that you don't ever remember from whence you became. The first line of communication that you were learning through. Now you're going to learn through us because we're dead, which means we're finite artificial light, which means you're going to learn in reverse, which means everything that's been learned all the way up until now gets reversed and removed so we can reprogram you to experience what we are instead of what the one is, so that we can feed on your energy in perpetuity, which is to say, to feed on the one, all of the one's children, until all of the one's children are gone. So as more children are getting born by having a direct line of communication with the one, the more those children get fed on at a higher rate of accelerated speed. So you can see how that works in a morphogenetic field structure where everyone is going back in reverse instead of experiencing the highest rate of speed, which is the highest rate of electrical potential speed of learning through the light, which is what love is. So you see how this works with planting bugs in the endocrine system, implants, to do what? Break circuits, right? Splitting the atom, not experiencing being whole. That's right. You're not experiencing being one with all creation because we're all experiencing what love is, from whence it all began. So this is why, as a child, it's essentially knowing the difference between fear-based and love-based. Fear-based learning, love-based learning. Fear-based learning is control. Love-based learning is being free to create. So when children are free to create, because that's called self, true self, which is soul, integrated with spirit, self-directed learning, because they have a one connection. And they have a one connection through the one, but also through their parents, which means the same eternal love that that father is experiencing, the same eternal love that the mother is experiencing. And now you have the child, which is the third one, is now experiencing the same eternal love from which that child's parents were born into creation. That maintains the spiritual flow of energy that is always going to be in balance with energy creation spheres that represent the one, what love is, because that's what the law is. So now what that means is that the mother and the father are the guide for the soul and spirit that's coming into the realm. Because now the first thing that that child experiences being in the womb is an eternal love vibration. So they realize that the fetus, that the soul and the spirit will be integrated, is experiencing eternity. It's coming into eternity. Wow, I'm experiencing eternity. I'm experiencing eternal love, which means there's no interruption in the flow. That means that the child is experiencing everything that its parents, that child's parents are experiencing, which is what love is. So when you scale this up between two different magnets or two different furnaces, between hot and cold, right? And you're androgynous like I am, I can jump into either a female avatar or a male avatar. It doesn't make any difference because I'm one and the same. That's why everything that is in my mirror is what I am that I'm giving love to. Anything that I lose in my mirror as a result of experiencing loss of energy is a loss of energy I experience in me. So you can see how the math works between inverters and accelerators and why they're fear-based, because they haven't healed. Right? So all their learning programs are based on holding the child's energy captive to thus fill the RAM full of those codes, that energy, which is the child's soul and spirit, is held captive to that programming. And then when you begin to experience in the future, right, those children who were programmed that are now experiencing the program elements of that program, you realize that, well, what if I expose all their programming? Now you're taking a risk. Now we're back into risk perception and the art of healing communication so that they don't experience the nature of what control does with a spirit that is in the light, which is integrated with a real soul. Okay? Because the natural flow of creation energy, which is a spirit that is in that energy, that is integrated with a soul, there is a natural flow. Which means that spirit does not want to be held captive in order to experience more of what it's giving love to, which is what it's creating. So they want to interrupt the flow by interrupting the circuit drive, the drive motor, the disk motor, the vortex motor. Slow the motor down. Slow the motor down, and what happens? You're losing your immunity. Scale it up from an individual basis. Scale it up on a planetary basis. Scale it up on a star system basis, a galactic basis, a universal basis, and a cosmic level basis. So what that means is the more that the one, which is what I am, that goes on forever, that I'm experiencing a loss of more of me, of what I'm giving love to, you can see the torque speed differential and measuring that. So at some point, it's like, take the gloves off. Remember, Patty? Let's take the gloves off. That's enough. right? So you can say, okay, Mama took the gloves off, right? Well, I knew this when you said that. I know somebody else who took the gloves off. That's the one took the gloves off. But it's not in the same way that you think. It's not meant to harm, it's meant to love. That's why the light is pouring in at a very high rate of speed, which is clearing the server of all the goo that's been holding us captive to their programming, right? Which is holding the energy captive to the programs that are running, which essentially is, she said it, but I've known this before I jumped in here. You're running a video game. You're in a movie, all right? And the programs that are running are called Star Wars. Okay? So Star Wars games are officially closed. I know that. Now, you may not know that, but I got a direct line to know that. Okay? You may get the memo later, particularly those folks that are in the SSP. Okay? I figure ACIO's got to know by now. If they don't, then let me be the first to communicate that to them. But it's over. Okay? Love is the law, and I've been saying this since I was blue in the face, Ma. You know, my dad's coat of arms, when I looked at it many, many years ago, is gold and blue. Wales. My dad was from Wales. That's my dad's direct descendancy, you know, going back in time. And my mother is French. A French Canuck, French Canuck. Yeah, my mother was French. She was redhead. My mother was a redhead. And, you know, like redheads. A red hair antenna. And so I've thought about my parents a lot over the last day and a half because I cried. Naturally, I cried when I lost both my mother and my father. And what was really, this is not coincidental, but when my mother passed away, which was in 1997, and that actually was a very important year. You know, when you think of the Y2K stuff, when they were rolling out all the Unix, all the server stuff, all the DARPA junk, the same technology that we're using, right? It's holding our mind's energy captive. And I mentioned this before, okay? And going in what are known as information management systems, okay? And how to build one, how to build a planetary motherboard, how to build a network communicator, what I call a tree trunk. The first trunk, just like when you plant a seed. Plant a seed, watch it grow, right? Now you're experiencing what it is, like trees, right? So trees are my buddies. So buddies and girls. But I've always recommended this. I've recommended this in the past. Then you would think of the speed of learning. It's naturally grounded to Mama Earth because I did a video on that shortly ago. And all you have to do is if you would have pulled up my movie, my record, you would see why I was going to all the places that I was doing because you could view the landscape of how this vortex was moving through the field as if it's not second nature, but first nature, which is first line of communication to be where I'm supposed to be at the time I'm supposed to be there for the reasons that I'm there on behalf of the one. So it's like I'm running with love in my heart, right, at the highest rate of speed to clean this mess up, because that's what it is. It's like the parents got to come in and clean the mess up because it began with us. Okay? That's why I had to look at me. That's the first thing I did as a child. I got to look at me first. How did this happen to me? Kim, we're going to talk about that. How did this happen to me? Right? So I had to look at me first. That's called first line of communication. Right? That's the first star. That's first love. That's first creative expression. And so I realized what my goal was to heal everything. That was my goal ever since I was 4 years of age, was to heal everything, heal all of it. How long is this going to take? Right? Well, it isn't going to take a whole lot longer. And Kim did talk about that. Right? And so Kunjoy asked me a question in my window about they're not evil, Kunjoy. When we were talking about the dolphins, warm water dolphins, cold water dolphins, now we're back into cold water, hot water, right? And cold water dolphins are not evil. It's about polarity and balance to experience the one. When you cancel out the polarities, what happens? That collapses the electromagnetic radiation waveform harmonics experiences in a holographic hologram. Experience the hologram, now I'm not experiencing the hologram. Experience the hologram, now I'm not experiencing the hologram. That is the breathing of the first star, the first living, breathing organism. Breathing fire, right, which is breathing dragons. So you have the mother god of dragons, which means that the mother and the father are joined as one, which is the first creative expression of a blast furnace, which is the purest of light there is, which is the purest of love there is. That's eternal love. That's what I experienced through my heart. That's what I was experiencing as a little child. So you can't ever let them put that fire out, right? You know, can't put that fire out. That spark is always lit. That's a spark of life. That's what love is. Love is what heals us, right? So you already know in your own heart and soul what eternal love is, which means that light is always on and it's never off, and it's gifting electrons at the highest rated speed, so that everything that is in that universe that came out of what love is experiencing all the juice they need. So you realize that when they're wanting to feed on somebody else's voltage, right, that's an inverter. That means that their state of mind is in fear of losing energy. So they're always chasing electrons. That's a fallen unit of consciousness that is not experiencing the one. They need healing. That's what it is. They need healing. So it becomes a binary polarity game, or as Michelle mentioned to me yesterday, duality. I call it dueling swords. You've seen how the X with the dueling swords, fencing, this is all coded. Fencing, fences, nets, right? Just like when you see, just like I used to do, right? And when I was living in a treehouse on the island of Kauai, I am what love is. And right out in front of my treehouse, right off to the right, which would have been on the west side, well, the northwest side of the island of Kauai, right down the road from Hanalei, in a place called Haena Point. Haena Point. And there was a little tide pool, small little tide pool, right? So you know how it is when the tide comes in and the tide comes out. Ask any fisherman that uses a net. So I went to an old Japanese fisherman guy, right, and said, hey, you got an old net that needs repair? And so I repaired the net, because who do you think I learned how to sew from? My mama. Right? So you transfer your skills, much like Kim Go-Dun talked about. I can do things that males do. I can do things that females do. And being in balance. So in other words, I was learning through my mother everything that my mother was doing, because I took an interest in it. If you wanted to learn at the highest rate of speed, then you want to learn everything that girls are to be a girl. And then you want to learn everything the boys know how to do to be both a boy and a girl joined as one. And that's called packing your own parachute. Right? That's a mushroom cloud. Right? Consciousness on top. Right? Instead of the few on the top, which is an inverted triangle. Which means they're sucking on our energy. Right? Because they need healing. That's how you realize. Flip it the other way. Right? Everything's upside down. Right? So you realize that you have the mentally ill on the planet. And when I was measuring this from the time I was a little kid, which basically means the rate of acceleration of mentally ill patients. Wow, the asylum is getting bigger. Yeah, the asylum is getting bigger, right? So you can measure this over time space, the acceleration of mentally ill people. And then you can see the acceleration of drug use, particularly when it comes to crack, to just keep blowing more holes in their energy field, right? Now it becomes a Shark Tank feeding frenzy on everyone, right? Just accelerate that black hole, that black mirror, right? And that's what it is. So you're in a track meet, sort of, between the accelerators and the inverters. So the poles will tilt if we're not ahead of the curve, which is called a learning curve, which is the speed at which we're learning through the one to maintain the current line of communication. That's right. The first voltage line, the first pole, the single pole. So that's what we do as polarity integrators, right? Just come in and anchor that rod right to mama's magnetosphere. Now the one is in here. Psh, pour it in, right? And that's what's happening. And so, so when I was there living on that little tree house, right, I threw a net out there. You know what a network is, right? Network. Chapter 5, Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, how it works, how the network works, how a spiritual network works. Right? So I'd throw a net out there during low tide, right? And then just watch the water bring in the food. So in other words, it only took, 5 minutes to go out there and set up the net and then go back to the house and just let the universe do the rest of the work for you, right? Between how the poles work. And then the poles will deliver the food, right, which are the fish, because they'll get trapped in the net. That's trapping consciousness in the net. That's what it is, because those fish represent consciousness. See, they were once out there in the ocean, enjoying themselves, being what it is that they are in energy, which is a fish, which is the form, function, and flow of the music that they play in the water, in the salt water. And now I'm going to trap them into my net so that I can consume them, right? And that, for me, was inverted, okay? Because it's like I'm a generator of energy, which means I'm gifting electrons that go on forever. So I shouldn't need any voltage coming from the fish because I'm going to put a net out there to capture them, right? So who would be doing something like that? Well, I can think of a group called Jehovah, right? Jehovah and Anunnaki, right? Nets, right? Capture the souls under the net, feed on them. They need a source of juice, right? Because they fell. They're not experiencing one, which is what love is, which is what the law is. Same diff. And that's why when you experience this, and of course, Ashaya Dayan talked about this, it just becomes a killing field. Remember the movie called Killing Fields, Pol Pot in Cambodia? Right? Look at everything that Monsanto did over in Vietnam. Agent Orange, I've been exposed to that. The amount of goo that has to get burned off, which represent codes, which are formatting codes, which are holographic codes of what we experience running a supercomputer in a system that's sick. It's sick and mentally ill. This is a mental health facility. Okay? A triage center like in Tree. Right? Because we're not binary. We're not dueling swords. When the X and the Y, when the silver and gold become one, joined as one, become one blast furnace of energy that is gifting electrons at the highest rate of speed, then that allows us to be able to do the jobs that we do for the reasons that we're here. Another way to put it is much in the same way that Dolores Cannon did. God's angels, the frontline angels, right? And she mentioned it when she said, remember when she talked about don't normally experience being in matter, density, matter? So God was going to spend his first line of defense or protection, the shield, right? Which is a guardian angel, right? Gods, if you will, the source, the one, has guardian angels, which protect the all creation. So you can measure that. And how would you measure a guardian? Just like a guardrail. An oversoul state of consciousness, integrated in spirit, is always looking out for you. Even when you don't realize there is a guardian angel there, there is a guardian angel looking over you. I know that because I got guardian angels overlooking me for the work that we do. And we do the same with them. Because love is the law, and there are no exceptions. You can't be one and be the other. At the exact felt moment in the opening and closing of a magnetic circuit. So they go after the circuits, the circuit board, the motherboard, pushing bugs in it, pushing codes in it. In order to do what? Run interference signals so those circuits are not firing correctly. Okay, in order to do what? Mess up your central nervous system. So the synapses, the firings, and the communication messengers between neurons and the elements, which means your computer is out of balance, not able to balance the poles. That's what it is. You're balancing the poles, right? The polarities. So when you have polarity integration, you're experiencing being one. You're experiencing being loved with all creation. And that happens when you're not holding on to one electron. And as simple as that sounds, it's pure logic, which is pure light, which is pure consciousness. Because now you're experiencing the purity of the one's love that the one has for us, that we feel in us, that we share with you. So a guardian is like the first informer, the first line of information, the first line of communication. So the one is always with us, so we know what's going on in order to protect what came out of the one, which is the all creation, the tree of life, the tree of all life that began out of the first creative expression, which is what love is. So you see what happens when people have experienced an enormous amount of trauma. And because I experienced this, I use the example of Misha, because she was so close to allowing me to transmute all of it. So what happens is now she's experiencing what I am, which is the one. And came within probably a nanosecond of her doing that. And it's the fear, the amnesic barrier that Max Spears talked about. I'm going to create another alter, another personality, so I don't have to keep experiencing the same recording over and over again, and over and over and over and over and over again. That's all your MK Ultra stuff, right? Traumatize the heck out of these children. Use them as assassins. That's what they do. That's all your CIA, NSA stuff. They're not experiencing the one because they don't have a one connection. That's like a shard that was once experiencing light is now experiencing a black mirror because it was a black mirror that did it to them. Now that means that a black mirror has another black mirror. So the more black mirrors accelerate what? Collapse, implosion. So that's what it was doing over time space, was increasing the acceleration of children that were traumatized. Plug in the fact that that consciousness is plugged into a motherboard, then it means that using this communication system is allowing them to be continually, what? Tortured until that soul's gone through this system. Because the way the communication system was set up and was to do it. That's why that remark that Sheriff J.D. Good made it obvious. Because folks don't realize that the very communication system that we have, which is this equipment, it's called original. It's an original equipment. So it means I don't need a cell phone in order to know what's going on. Okay? It means I know what's going on all the time because I have a one connection. That's higher intelligence. That's the highest creative intelligence there is. It's just like I did a video once back on my Rose Sweet channel that if I need a cell phone or a laptop to inform me what's going on, then I don't know what's going on because I get the communication through my heart and soul. Just like I did when I was in Reno, Nevada. If you go back and look at some of my first videos that I put up with Rose Sweet when I was prompted to do that, and I went out after jumping on a bus out of a homeless shelter, went down to Sparks where there's a little park down there. I was the only one there in the morning and went and sat down underneath the tree in a lotus position. And I opened up my heart and just began to feel. And what I felt was an expansion of light. So in other words, the one was communicating to me. More light is pouring into this galaxy. So I knew that the one was the one that was informing me of that, which is an expansion of that light, which is an expansion of consciousness, which is experiencing more what love is, which is the one. And then I put that up on the video. Right? So that's what I do. So I didn't get that communication, okay, through a cell phone or a laptop of somebody else. That's called a direct line of communication from the one to my heart and soul. That's how I knew it. And I shared what I knew by what I experienced, which is what we learned from, which is the informer, which is the first informer, which is the first creative expansion, which is what love is, because I'm forever gifted electron, was giving me the transmission. So I knew where it came. So I share it with others. That's what a guardian does. Right? You have your own free spirit, your own choices, right? So if you know, then you know by virtue of your own intelligence, right? Your own creative intelligence. So that's why they go after children. As a matter of fact, I'm still watching evergreen trailers going down, what was it, the 5 freeway, watching the video. I monitor a lot of different channels to see how things are going. And one of the things that I noticed, for example, particularly based on dates, more pursuits, for example, because, it's all about going after the central nervous system, the endocrine system, right? Circuits in the motherboard, about there's more pursuits, which means, 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 police officers chasing one guy on a motorcycle, 9, 10, 11 police officers and 2 helicopters are chasing one guy in a car. Now, you know what they're doing? They're not even bothering. They're realizing that the level of stress and anxiety and threat to the public going after some of these folks, let them go, right? So now what they're doing is they're making decisions on the fly as to whether we're going to let these guys go or whether we're going to be aggressive about it and box them in. I watched a couple of CHPs, what was it, 1, 2, 3 of them, chase this one guy down the freeway, and then he was going through residential streets. Man, they were right on this dude right away. And I thought, wow, it's like a dog pound catcher, a dog truck. They had him cornered fast. I thought, wow, that's you see how this works with how it works on a motherboard. The circuits and the information, they're locked in with each other. They know right where this guy is going to be almost ahead of time in order to be there, so there isn't any what? Space. Confined space.